would like to say is that over the last few months particularly, the city of Delhi has been sort of just painted really black in the media. And all of us are concerned. We are concerned about the way the city is functioning, the way it's moving, where it's going, where its people are going, where are the women in the city, what are they facing. And from my location, both in the Center for Women's Development Studies, also as a student of history, as someone who has grown in this city, grown up and has grown with this city in a sense, it troubles us when we see our city moving in a direction which none of us are happy about. But I think it also compels us to think about what is happening, what is leading to these kind of situations. Was it always so bad? Because there are people who will say, "Arey, Delhi to bahut hi hostile hai to women." Now, some of us have grown up in this city and we have not always seen it to be so hostile. We have found it giving us opportunities, giving us platforms, giving us opportunities to explore all kinds of, thoughts, ideas, mobility, everything it has given us. But I think what is happening is that somehow we are not talking to each other. Different sections of people who are moving in also are not really relating to the city. It's just become a kind of a residential place. But I think the city had its own culture, its own forum of cultural interaction, etc. So what we want to also do is to capture the different segments of this city, different social sections, how people work in different situations, and how women's lives in all this. Usually what has happened is we do have several histories of this city. We have architectural histories, heritage stories, we have the whole physical, spatial, monumental sort of picture. But what someone like me finds that what we are missing out is the social process and the social history and women's specific experiences. And we want to enrich ourselves through interaction with different people who have had very rich experiences and who are fully and better informed about the experience. But I think what we really need to do is to both document earlier pasts, as well as try to make it into that's why we're calling it a conversation and a dialogue, so that we move forward in a more constructive, creative, with a process of interaction and conversation, rather than just have different sort of sections of specialists who are not talking to each other.
If you claim to have no special knowledge, neither do I. But except for the fact that I have a few lenses to my with which I see things around me, and one of the most powerful lenses is of Hindu College, because I entered that college when I was 17 years old, and the joke was that I'd never leave it. But with great difficulty managed to tear myself out of it when I was 58, so in 2008. So I lived on that campus also for a good 14-15 years, and the difference, because when I moved to that campus I said, oh my God, how am I ever going to live in Old Delhi, and I discovered a different world. It was a very gentle world, and at that time I was not principal in the college at all. I had a tiny house, and first time I went out, I was trying to go out, and I found my tire was punctured, and that was a pointer. I drove out and I went to this gas station, petrol station, and I said, this tire, if you can repair it, I'll go. On my way back, I'll take it. And this man out of the blue, he said, are you driving alone? And I said, yes. So he said, you shouldn't go without a spare tire. So if you wait for 15 minutes, although we are not yet started work, I'll repair your tire before you go. Now that kind of a consideration I would not find in South Delhi or Central Delhi, where I've lived, myself. But of course, as I said, I could be. Because to me, this project is really like reclaiming the lives of women, um, often hidden. And Mrs. Hiremath is here. I used to go crazy as the wife of a Foreign Service officer. Gracious hostess, what in heaven's name does that mean? That you made lots of samosas. That's what it really means. But really, if these lives are hidden, the talents are hidden, often even forgotten. Not just hidden.
I sympathize with you.
Yeah, often even forgotten. But the influence is felt. The influence is felt in the, if you take the Hindu college and the ferment of, intellectual ferment of the walled city, through the parda, through the chicks, which were put on verandas and rooms behind which girl students sat. You can feel the ripples in the social interactions of the families, of the way they raise their children, but somehow they don't seem to get any recognition of what they do, or it's a half-hearted recognition, or it's a social kind of a cursory kind of a, ritualized kind of a recognition, rather than a recognition for your own, what you have actually done. And then what happened, I've been involved with the women's studies in the university, and this was my constant thing that, we keep getting ghettoized, we keep preaching to the converted, so it's the women talking to the women. Well, what's the use? You need to talk to the men. And therefore, I think one of the things, and that's why I was so happy when this project came through, that we need to do is to make this gender awareness, gender sensitivity, and the accomplishments, the attainments, the contributions of women into every discipline that we teach, because they are there everywhere and they have just been silenced in history, in literature, and I won't go into all of this right now. And so therefore I'm quite excited about this whole thing. As I said, it's good to have Kamlesh here, who has hands-on experience of this area, and of course my prism is education. And I've just finished my book on Hindu college, which led me in lots of heat and dust, but actually with lots of pleasure, into the streets of Chandni Chowk and Kinari Bazaar and the Bada Dariba and all of that. And I'm just absolutely wonderstruck with that whole area. I also researched it. So I think walled city, which now we look on and people have moved out of that area, is actually a very exciting place. It is a place of nationalist ferment, intellectual ferment. It also post 1857, if you see it, a great social religious ferment, and not just between the Hindus and the Muslims and the Christians and the missionary activities, and all of that intersect among the Hindus themselves, among the Arya Samajis, the Sanatanis, the Reformists, and all of that. The caste associations that sprang up, and I'm very happy if it happens, and I think it's going to happen. For about a year, Dr. Majumdar, who's our chief librarian here, and I have been trying to push the Marwari library. I don't even know how many people know about the Marwari library. It's a 98-year-old institution, and it has some very valuable books, which nobody knows about them. And every nationalist leader has been there. So many meetings of independence during the independence movement have been held there, and no one knows about it. We finally managed to get the CDAC to agree to digitize that entire thing, which is outside of copyright. The other place that something needs to be done about is the Hardea library, which again, I'm going to start now that Marwari has happened. I'll try and push them and see what happens. That might be a more difficult nut to crack because that's with the municipal corporation. But who knows? If we can persuade them, then the resources of that can be very, very useful. And also what comes to me, the caste associations, the Rai Bahadurs, the Raises, how progressive they were. The caste associations are not what we think of now. They were meant to uplift a section of that community. there was also the nationalist industrialization. That's why the DCM and Hindu College and all came at the same time, and the same Rai Bahadurs were intersecting, whether it was in Indraprasth school, whether it was in DCM, whether it was in the board of Hindu College, and it's a fascinating kind of a intersection. So you have actually the men leading this. They are the ones who have the resources. So apart from the Theosophist Society and Mrs. Annie Besant and putting the Theosophist Society into it, there are people like Rai Bahadur Sultan Singh, Lala Jugal Kishore, you have Pyare Lal, people from Hindu College, I know Kapurthala and Kishangarh, and so what makes all of these people who have so much to lose to actually come together? And then I found people like Raghumal from Calcutta, and then I always thought that in this what is it called now, Vedic library, Indraprasth Vedic library must be a library, but it's actually a publishing house. It's not a library at all. So these supposedly in Kucha Dayaram. So anyway, all these people who came together to form these libraries, these schools, and the girls. And of course, I only know it from my own Indraprasth magazine, the kind of very amusing, some of them very amusing, I won't tell you the more serious things, but the more amusing ones, like Envi Thadani. One girl came and she was wanting to do her graduation here, but she took admission in as a residence in YWCA in New Delhi. And he said, no way, you can't come riding on a cycle. That's very, it's not decorous. So if you want to study here, you need to go to the old Delhi YWCA so that you can walk to college. So that's what she had to do. Now, there are descriptions of the classrooms with chicks hanging there, and all the girls being put behind those chicks. And then some professor would come and escort them to the front rows of the classroom, and then they came back, which gave them no opportunity to actually go to the library. That was debarred to them. Then there are very interesting descriptions of how the girls got together. Actually, Dr. Vatsayan has a very interesting write-up on that. They decided to stage a play. And there is a very amusing thing on how can they stage a play. All the boys will see it. So you can't stage a play because the audience will consist of boys. And then who will do the male parts? So already you have a very small population of girls. But it was said that only girls can do the male parts. Now how do you find in that little population of girls also to do the male parts? So after a lot of wrangling, it was decided that hopefully the faculty members would be safe enough to essay the male parts, and that the boys can see the play, but they would be segregated in the audience between the boys and girls. Now, from that, when I went through some police reports, from that you come to a point where they're participating in the national movement and they're going to jail. Now, I also always thought that it would be girls from Hindu College and Ramjas College, but I was quite surprised to find a whole lot of names from Indraprasth College.
Yes,
and they were jumping over walls in spite of the prohibition to go and take part in this movement. So that's a big, big journey. And of course, if you see the early curriculum debates, they must do hygiene because they must become good wives and mothers. And many of us grew up reading those books. Louisa M. Alcott, Good Wives and Good Mothers and all. So they need to read hygiene, they need to do sewing, they need to do cooking, they need to do embroidery, housekeeping. Those are the curriculum which was designed for girls. But very, very quietly, this comes in slipping of science. And it broadens out. But it cannot broaden out if you want women's education in the walled city without, or in that, that was the only city, without assuring the parents that this would not lead to the breakdown of the family and that the girls would actually go and get married and would listen to whatever they were saying. So what it really shows is women's, and I'm going to stop here and let her speak, the women's ability to negotiate different worlds without a friction. with sacrifice, with a bit of humor, with persistence. A lot of women who came out at that time, they had to not just negotiate this, they had to negotiate their homes, their parents, their societies. My mother was one such. She was a 1945 medical graduate, and she used to tell me stories on how negotiations took place from childhood onwards, about dress, about food, about what were the norms of decorum, and so on and so forth. Many of us know those here. Many of us have experienced those. With these few words, may I hand it over to you.
Kamlesh, who taught in the school, who firstly grew up in this city, in the old city, who taught in the school, then headed it as the principal, will talk to us both about her work as well as her experience of living in Delhi, and then a little bit about what was happening to Delhi through all this. So, Kamlesh, we'll just keep it free floating, and you we'll ask you questions where I feel there's something needed.
When Kavita started talking, she said something about how her heart really felt very heavy when she had to go from South Delhi and live in Old Delhi. The reverse happened to me. I am a Pakka Dilli wala. I was born and brought up in Delhi. I lived in an area which was partially Hindu and partially Muslim. One side of the area was completely Hindu houses, and the other side was Muslim people living, with a few Christian homes here, there, and everywhere. I lived there. I lived very happily there. I went to school from there, first to presentation for a few years, until my mother decided that I can become a nun, so she got me out of it. And you know where I went to next? In the Prastha school. A school which later on I realized, when I became a part of Queen Mary's, had almost been a rival to Queen Mary's at one time when the two schools were very, very young and had just started. So, a Christian going to Indraprastha school, learning all that is taught in a school like that, going to Indraprastha college later on. Well, that came by and by, and then I started my teaching career from Jamia Millia. I have tasted everything. That was where I actually went, and I was the first lady teacher to be appointed in the senior secondary school there. They had never had women teachers before that. But then, let's go back to Queen Mary's. Queen Mary's was not started by the British. It was the work of one lone woman, a woman called Helen Jerwood, who before the turn of the previous century used to cycle around in Old Delhi. A tall, very beautiful, very, very good looking woman, a graduate from Cambridge University, used to cycle around in Old Delhi because she wanted to learn about the city firsthand. She was a part of a group of people called the SPG Mission. She went back to them and said she wanted to start a school for girls. And she actually started her very first school before the turn of the century then. And then plague happened and all kinds of things happened, and the school could not take off. 1911, she started it again, and this time because by that time she knew that the Muslim girls in the city had no place to go to. There was a beautiful school called Indraprastha Hindu Girls School with Annie Besant and other people like that taking care of it. So she decided to start a school in a rented house in Jama Masjid area, and she had 4 girls coming, 4 Muslim girls. Within the year, the number had increased to 20. And I think that was an achievement, because all these girls came from the kind of background where parda was very, very important. She managed to teach them not only through the vernacular, because she had a couple of people there with her, but also English. And then it was that the British Sarkar started noticing what she was doing, and they gave her a place next to the two most important colleges of that time, St. Stephen's and Hindu College, and there was this little building where Queen Mary's was taken to. She had many more students by that time. Now, 1911 was a very important year in the history of Delhi. The Darbar was taking place. Queen Mary had come for the coronation along with King George V. That is when 4 different people or 4 different entities went to Queen Mary and asked her if they could use her name. One of them was Helen Jerwood. So we had Queen Mary's in Delhi getting its name. But not many people know that there are 3 other Queen Marys. One in Madras, one in Bombay, and one in Lahore. A few years ago, I went to Lahore and I went to see that Queen Mary's. When I came back, I was very happy because my Queen Mary's was so much better, run in a much better way. Maybe you can say because I was running it. But I really enjoyed visiting that school because that has been taken over by the government there. Here, we have a very free hand to do whatever we want and how to teach our girls and so on. 1915, Tis Hazare is where we went to, and that is where Queen Mary still is. It's a beautiful old building, one of the most charmingly built schools you can come across. And from what I understand, all of 50,000 rupees was spent on building the school. Most of it came from Miss Fenn, who was also a doctor in Lady Hardinge Hospital. She would help to run the school as well as be a doctor. Now, initially, boys went to that school. Now you will say, how come? When the school was for Muslim girls, it had a very strict Parda system. It still has a garden which is known as Parda Garden. Boys were not permitted into that area at all. Up to the age of 7, boys could go and study in Queen Mary's. One of the better known people, I think, Amin Sahab of St. Stephen's College, his son Shahid, the moment he will see me, he will say, "Main aapke school mein padha." And I told him, I said, "You are exactly that way because you came to Queen Mary's initially." Well, boys were there till the age of 7, and after that, no. But they could not use the Parda gadis in which the girls were brought. And this school by that time had girls from all religions. It was no longer just meant for Muslim girls, even though the majority were still Muslims. The Patiala family, they sent all their daughters to Queen Mary's. We still have a tablet in the primary school which says that that part of the school was built with the help of the Patiala family. Some of the best known names, Sucheta Kriplani, the lady who sang the national anthem for the first time after independence, was an alumnus of Queen Mary's. From Sucheta Kriplani, I will go to Naseem Bano, the most beautiful heroine of her time, Saira Banu's mother. Anita Desai, a very well-known writer, Madhu Jaffrey, you name them. I mean, if I start now counting the names, I can just go on and on. We've had some of the best known women. Now, we lost a lot of them to Pakistan when the partition took place. But I know for sure that a lot of them across the border became very well-known women. Today somebody was talking about it, Seema, I think. Parvez Musharraf's mother. She studied in Queen Mary's. I mean, today I go anywhere, and now talking of the more recent past, and I run into girls from Queen Mary's who have done extremely well. And I take part of the credit because I've taught a lot of them. that school has produced some fantastic people, women of caliber, women of substance. The main thing is that it was a school started for a community which did not at that time believe in educating its girls. And yet, a school like Queen Mary's attracted so many Muslim families to send their daughters to the school that at one time it was actually known as a Muslim school. And then suddenly after the partition, the whole thing came down. Most of the elite Muslim families left for Pakistan, and obviously the girls went with them.
Kamlesh, tell us something.
In ninth,
Tell us something like, when you're saying for Muslim girls,
Yeah.
how about the medium of education? How about the content of
you see, at that time Urdu was there, but the medium of instruction in the school was English, right through. We have a boarding, and girls from a lot of different places in India came. And the only school that the parents would send them to in the boarding was Queen Mary's. And I think the total credit for that has to go to the principal who started the school. It was Helen Jerwood who really made it what it was. Later on, a lot of other people came and started taking care of the school, helping her out, but she was the pivot. Now in 19...
Just to ask you, you mean the hostel was there right from the beginning?
Right from 1918 or something.
So even at that time, people were willing to send their daughters to go and live in a hostel. That's, I think, very interesting. Normally, we would think that people would hesitate to.
You see, I joined the school as a teacher in 1972. I taught English, and then 1990 I became the principal of the school, and that is when I decided that a lot of changes were required. The first thing I did was to reintroduce Urdu, because I felt, Urdu is my language, I love it. Given half a chance, मैं उर्दू में बात करना शुरू कर दूँ. But I felt very strongly that if I had to bring the original nature of the school back, I had to bring the Muslim girls back also. And I very strongly feel that that is one community where education is required, and you have to teach the girls if you want any changes to be brought about. So Urdu was introduced, but then I also started getting a lot of girls from Northeast, so I brought in Manipuri as the other language to be taught in the school, and French. Now, 3 different languages, but it all added to the school. And while there were perhaps altogether about 10, 12 Muslim girls in the school, when I left in 2000, the population of Muslim girls in my school was nearly 18%, which is not bad at all. I'm very proud of that. A lot of the girls in my school who became head girls were Muslim girls. They did extremely well. A lot of them came from Jama Masjid area, which is not very near to Tees Hazari. There are people I know in Jama Masjid whose daughters came to my school, and the girls are doing PhD, they are doctors, they are teachers. Bada Hindu Rao, which when you think of it, you say, what kind of an area is that? Their daughters come to Queen Mary's, and they all come out knowing much, much more about the world and their own rights and what they can do in the world, because they have been to Queen Mary's. Now, that school, in its own way, has always shown the path to others. Somebody said it was the first school to be opened in Delhi. It is not. The first school that was opened for girls was a school called Victoria School, Rajpur Road. And then there's another one in the same area called Gange, Baptist Gange School. But there are two other schools, non-missionary schools, Lady Irwin and Indraprastha. These were the main schools. Presentation, as you very rightly said, came much later. So did St. Thomas. But then Helen Jerwood not only studied Queen Mary's, she also studied St. Thomas School, Mandir Marg. She started a school by the same name in Simla. There was something about one person who brought about such a tremendous change in the lives of, I think, thousands and thousands of women. At one stage you said, when we have a group like this, women talk to women. I think it is to women one has to talk. They are the ones who, as you very rightly said, get their own way. In the home, it is the women who decide whether it's the boys who will go to the better school.
I can vouch for that.
Thank you very much. But at the moment, I am the speaker.
No, I'm just backing you.
You see, it's women who decide till which standard their daughters can study, and after that they should get married, they should settle down to do this and that. Most of the atrocities, I am sorry, inside the home are by women against women. If we can really teach a woman what is right and what is wrong, I think a lot of our problems can be solved.